Hi, I'm Yolanda Sissing and I am a freelance social media marketer. If you're a freelancer, the pitfalls often come with loads of good benefits because you've decided to do something that nobody else is brave enough to do. I found my happy place. This is what I want to do. I want to work with people who've got really interesting ideas, who are out there in the world making business and opening up opportunities and giving back to the planet somehow. And so that's been my purpose.
Yes, their story coming up in a moment. I'm Steve Follam. Welcome to another one. This episode is supported by and recorded using Riverside. If you're after high quality audio and video for your podcasts, for your client testimonials, for your live streaming, for your webinars, I really recommend checking it out. Not just for creating it in the first place, but for them repurposing it using their very clever AI editors, their inbuilt transcription tools. It's a time saver when you're doing everything yourself. So go to beingfreelance.com/Riverside. It's free to get started. But if you want to get a paid plan, code beingfreelance will save you 15%.
I think it's helping people to understand that not everyone can do your job.
Oh, I love that quote. Love this episode. Can't wait for you to hear Yolanda's story. She's from South Africa, now living in London, and her freelancing story coming to you very soon indeed. Just want to let you know that the Being Freelance book club is about to meet once more in the Being Freelance community. The book is Ali Abdaal's Feel Good Productivity. Here it is. You can come and join us. It says on the back, the secret to productivity isn't discipline, it's joy. Well, we'll find out if it's a good book, if it's any use to our businesses, if it's good for freelancers. You can come join us. Being Freelance community. And yes, that's the one we're reading next. I'm only about, 54 pages in, and already it's going quite, because it's like science behind the joy of productivity, right? And it's already starting to explain why the Being Freelance community co-working works so well, because we have a lot of fun, and then you kind of get a lot done at the same time. Anyway, no spoilers. Read the book and then come discuss it with us in the Being Freelance community. Details are at beingfreelance.com. Tell you what, let's crack on and chat to this week's guest, shall we? And that is freelance social media marketer Yolanda Sissing. As ever, how about we get started hearing how you got started being freelance?
Yes, nobody in my family has set up their own business. I was the first one to launch into the world of entrepreneurship. As you can tell from my accent, I'm from South Africa. So I lived there up until my adult life. I worked as a journalist for print newspapers back then, and then decided, I don't think I've seen enough of the world. So I want to go and explore, which is what I did. So I came over to the UK. I found it quite a shift in my head. I had imagined that all of London, spoke the Queen's English, that the roads were paved with gold, that everybody walked around in like old Georgian outfits. And that wasn't quite the case. I had found myself living in Shepherd's Bush in West London and just fell in love with the grittiness of London. And worked within a charity. And I thought to myself, okay, there's something here about giving back to communities and just understanding all the complexities of what it is to live in the UK. Helped to set up loads of volunteering programs and was really, really passionate about that line of work. Fast forward a few years after that, I had been working in the charity sector at the time for just over a decade. And my family went over for a trip to Spain and had a very horrific and harrowing near-death experience. And I remember coming back to my desk on the Monday after that weekend, busy working on a KPI report. And I just thought, what the hell am I doing? I'm in an office, like I nearly died. And I'm trying to pencil out data for a report that's due to go to the board. And I thought in that moment, this is not what I want to do. I don't want to work 9 to 5 in office anymore. I want to be with my kids. I want to have time that's mine. And so I left, not having a clue what it was that I was going to do. Spent about 2 years just potting around in social media. And my friends used to call me joking like the reluctant social media manager because I was the last of all of them to jump onto any sort of social media platforms. But I had genuinely grown to love. Instagram at the time was my favorite platform to go onto. And I thought there must be something to this. Like, what is it that's working behind the machines that we don't see that's keeping people online? And I became really, really fascinated with the process. And so found a training program for moms. You must have spoken to a few people who'd done the Digital Mums program, and retrained as an advanced social media marketer, and then set up Pink Leaf Social since then. So that was my route into it. It was not planned, but I'm glad that I did take the leap. It's really changed the way that I see life and work and business just generally now.
And how long ago was that?
So that was in 2019 that I launched. Yeah, I launched. So just before COVID. But also I think in a way it was good because everybody was actually online. So it did help me kind of cement what it was that I wanted to do.
And you went with a business name right from the start, did you?
I did, yes. I sat for a long time and I thought, what was it that I wanted to speak to people about? Like, what is the thing that I want to come across in the work that I'm doing that I think I can hold on to in terms of longevity? And I think it was probably month 3 after I had spoken to a few people. And I love the color pink because it's extremely feminine and I'm all about girl power. And I had a young girl at the time who wasn't into pink, but I wanted to also show her that there was there was strength in being a woman in business. And then leaf, probably down to my roots in South Africa and just growing up in just the most leafy surroundings and understanding that there's growth that can happen within nature and being rooted in something that feels quite, I don't know, intrinsic to who we are as human beings. So Pink Leaf Social is the name that stuck. So yeah, from the beginning.
And how did you present yourself, like as a company, as in like, we do this? Or were you still, despite using a company name, still, I will?
Yeah, those early days, when I look back at it now, I mean, I really didn't know what I was doing. I thought I knew what I was doing, but I really didn't know what I was doing. And there was a lot of reticence, I think, because it was something completely new. And a lot of people who were in social media at the time were much, much younger than me. So you had all of these overtones about, are you sure you're in the right place? So I wanted to present myself as being confident and not necessarily selling something that wasn't real or authentic. So I did do a lot of I's, not we's, because I just thought I'm not going to present myself as like a massive corporate business because I want people to invest in me as an individual. And I went in, I think, with the intention to speak to people's values as opposed to the numbers, because I think I struggle still with this, with lots of people going, I made $20 million on doing this. And I wanted to tap into what was it that kept us human? Again, going back to that social media element, like, why are people still in line? What is it that keeps them going here? So thinking more about the psychology behind it. So a lot of my conversations with people at the time were around people's social media habits, the brands that they love, what is it that they think will keep them staying there, and also what it is that they're passionate about. So that the social media usage becomes not necessarily a chore, but something that they genuinely love and enjoy doing. But that also took time because I was speaking that language and other people weren't necessarily, they were seeing algorithm reports and, but I should be doing this and, TikTok's just launched and I should be going viral. And I just kept on going, no, trust me, this is a good approach to take. And so far, touch wood, it seems to have worked.
So how did you go about getting those first freelance clients?
So my first lucky break was a friend of mine who is a very successful property developer who didn't have a clue about social media. And he said, look, you're doing this. You look like you know what you're doing. I trust you. Can you get me started? And so I got my first job with him. He was very well connected within estate agents, art galleries and doing work internationally. And so word of mouth started spreading. And that's sort of the sector that I lived in for a year and a bit. And then I became a bit more confident about what it is that I wanted to do and who it was that I wanted to work with. And because thankfully it was a friend, I could test out things without feeling like I was letting people down. So I could try the kind of frameworks that work and then speak with a bit more confidence to say, I think this is the method we should be following on this platform or that platform. And then I started spending more time on LinkedIn. And actually, LinkedIn for me has been a gold mine. In fact, that's where we started meeting or chatting to each other. So I've always felt fairly comfortable there because it's something that I did while I was working in the charity sector, but I just changed the conversation in the way that I shared and communicated what it was that I was doing. And then my contacts or my network within LinkedIn obviously existed within the charity sector. So I started speaking to loads more people within the charity sector and got clients from there, which was, again, fantastic because it's right up my alley. I've started doing more networking events. And as a result of those events, I got work sent in my direction. Lots of really interesting businesses, female founders, startups. People are really keen to kind of do good, for the planet or for people generally. So that's what's worked for me. I've also now, I think, become a bit more intentional about what I'm doing and where I position myself. So I am a part of a number of directories where other marketers or other businesses might be a part of who could refer work or spot your work that you're doing. And I've also, doing more talks and conversations and workshops within membership groups where I know people would be interested to find out more about how to do their social media better or more ethically. And that's worked really well. It's not, I think when you're a freelancer, it's always a bit of a gamble where you punt yourself. But I think as time has gone by and being more intentional about, how you use your energy and where you spend your time, I think it becomes a lot more easier.
What kind of thing were you doing on LinkedIn then?
In the early days, I did more, what's the word I'd like to say? Sort of probing posts. So I just pose questions about things that people might be talking about, not having an express view on stuff. And I think that's probably because I am quite a thoughtful person. So if somebody will share something, I'll be like, oh, why did they say that? What was sitting behind that bit of information they were sharing? I wonder if there's more research that could back up what they were talking about or whatever. So I started posting more thoughts about topics that people were discussing within my sector. And then I had some really good advice from someone who's far more experienced than me in one of the communities that I'm part of on LinkedIn. And they were saying, actually, Yolanda, I love what you do, but I don't actually know what it is that you do. So you need to start talking more about what it is that you do. So I have started, I then made a conscious decision also to dot those little thought pieces with actual information about what it is that I can offer and the services that I deliver to people. And that's helped tremendously. I also spend a lot of time on LinkedIn, not necessarily just posting. I'm a very firm believer that you have to be able to network with people behind the scenes because those conversations don't always happen just from broadcasting what it is that you're doing. So whether that's DMs or leaving voice notes for people or following up on emails on what people have been up to or, even simple things like LinkedIn has now started introducing these little notifications around people's birthdays or milestones that they might be celebrating. So even little things like, last week I sent a happy birthday wish to someone who I had met at a networking event years ago who runs her own education kids activity club. And she's like, oh my gosh, how are you doing? I've been meaning to get in touch with you. And then we started talking and now we've got like a discovery call booked in for next week. That wasn't my intention at all, but it is about nurturing those sort of relationships in the longer term, which I think has worked quite successfully.
Yeah, interesting. And so when you went to networking events as well, were those like a natural place for you to be?
No.
I wish you could see. Well, if you're watching on YouTube or Spotify, you did enjoy that face.
Yes. I have to say, I I love talking, but I don't love networking. It's a very strange thing. So I think it's also probably the crossover from being networking as a corporate person. So you have got a mandate to go out there by your boss to go and do something quite specific, and you walk away with information. If you're a freelancer, it's almost like you have to kind of reinvent your persona as you're going out and about in the world and sell your wares, which I think for some people can be quite problematic. And I despise small talk a lot. So I find that quite, I find it quite difficult. Like, oh, how was your journey? Is it like, it's not my thing. So I did find that quite a struggle. So in the beginning, I spent a lot of time in sort of local networking groups, speaking to local businesses, decision makers, the councils, and I loved it, but I just wasn't quite getting any value from it in the same way. And then I launched into more sort of peer group networking events, so more marketing networking events, which was fantastic in terms of knowledge building and learning, but it wasn't necessarily, I realized, not going to be a source of work in the same way. And then I'm a founding advisory member of Female Founders Rise, for instance, which helps to promote women in business and make sure that we just amplify messages around to get funding or run their own business and any pitfalls they may come across. And that was quite a game changer for me, because I then started thinking about, if I'm networking with people, I want to be sure that I am somehow part of communities that are making a difference. And so going forward, I've now joined groups or gone along to events where I can see that it's having some sort of impact, which I like. And again, that's helped with networking online as part of LinkedIn. It's helped with being part of the directories, being invited to masterclasses or as a panelist or featured in newsletters or whatever the case may be. So I think that's worked quite well. And then to your point about networking, just generally, I'm the co-founder of a anti-networking group. We call ourselves the Antisocial Socialites, which is for people who hate networking and hate getting pitch slapped whenever they go along to events. So what we purposely done, myself and my friend Liz, is we've sought to make sure that when we do host events, that it's primed at people who want something different and want something that aligns with their personality traits, or, if they're neurodivergent, for instance, you don't feel like you need to present yourself in a completely different way. You can just show up as you are. So we've done gaming nights. We've had like rum distillery cocktail making sessions. We've had, all of these different activities. And out of those come conversations, because people are socializing, they're enjoying themselves. And yeah, as you know, Steve, and then what happens is you then have a community of people who are happy, feel comfortable, they trust you, and they are willing to work with you, whether that's financially or collaboratively or whatever the case may be. So yeah, I'm all for that form of networking. I've just had to change my mindset as the years have gone by, and I'm now comfortable just chatting. Let's just talk.
Love that. The Antisocial Socialites. We'll put a link at the website. You've just reminded me, I need to set up a Being Freelance mini golf game, actually.
Ooh,
our
nice.
annual tournament. There we go. Yeah. It's fun. The very first year we did it, there were genuinely deals being done on the golf course, if you see what I mean. It was, by the end of it, some people had work out of it. And it was like, we were just, I was just trying to win. Get it through that windmill. So one thing I kind of picked up on, maybe I'm wrong, is I know you started in helping property developers because that's who you knew. It sounds like you've almost accidentally or followed into a niche of values, or am I way off?
Yes, no, you're right. So it was during lockdown, actually, when work sort of slowed down for everyone. But particularly that client and the industry that I was operating in. People weren't moving, nobody was traveling. And I sat down and I just thought, what is it that I'd like to do? And I was chatting to an author who I was working on his LinkedIn and his Twitter social media platforms. And I thought, you know what? I think this is probably what I want to be able to do, because everybody was talking about niching down. And I thought, I don't want to niche down to a specific sector, because I think people can add value in whatever industry they're in. What I'd like to do is to be able to work with people who are sort of, purpose-driven or mission-led, or they're heart-centered or something. And I then became intentional about who it was that I was reaching out to online. And when I was talking to people, how much value I could provide to them to help them just reshape what it is that they were selling. Because I think part of the struggle that I was hearing from people is they didn't feel like they wanted to adapt all the time to the same sort of tactics that were used by, larger companies. And it was also during that time when I started working with a really wonderful independent business local to where I am, who made it her mission to only provide shopping space or retail space or outlets for people who were independent businesses where I lived. So in my personal time, because I was at home during those 2 years, I had started a personal blog where I went around and just showcased Ealing, which is where I'm from, and spoke about what it was that I loved doing. And so that conversation led to me supporting her as part of her business with her social media. And I met so many fantastic independent businesses, so many people who were either working with people in South America or making hand-beaded, crafts and stuff, or Black-owned businesses who were taking their time helping to train young people. There were people who were repurposing, recycled fabric and, all of these really, really interesting projects. And then I was like, I found my happy place. This is what I want to do. I want to work with people who've got really interesting ideas, who are out there in the world making business and opening up opportunities and giving back to the planet somehow. And so that's been my purpose since then. So it hasn't changed. It's given me space to work with really interesting charities who are working with people living with dementia, or providing holiday opportunities for carers, or one of my most recent clients that I've taken on is doing some really interesting things around renewable energy projects and sustainability. So yeah, I think this is where I want to continue going. It just feels like the right fit.
I like the sound of that, because I've spoken to freelancers who have maybe got bored, not necessarily on this podcast, but just in general, who get bored in an industry niche, or only writing about one topic, for example, but actually, especially the sense that you're making a difference by helping these companies when they're purpose driven.
Yes.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah. And I think because, social media is quite a fast moving sector, isn't it? So you have to continuously adapt. And I think when you're working with brands that are inspired to keep doing what they're doing, it gets easier to then go, look, this is part of what marketing can do for what it is that you'd like to leverage within your work. So yeah.
Are you somebody who is doing the social media for people, or are you somebody who is strategizing and helping people then go and do it for themselves?
Yes. So when I first started, I was only doing the doing. And it was extremely overwhelming because I had 2 young children and I couldn't switch off and was constantly online. And again, I think because I was trying to prove that I could make this work, I pushed myself quite a lot to do that. I did have a moment of clarity just as we were coming out of lockdown. So 2021-ish, it was too much. Like I just wasn't paying attention to my kids. Like we were on holiday, I was on my phone all the time. I was constantly triple checking. And I did have a few clients who didn't quite understand the level of commitment that is required. Like in their mind, it's like, oh, the social media is done. But actually for me, it was like a 12-hour, 15-hour day and just wasn't sustainable. So I deviated from that. And I've now got a combination of services that I offer because I think that helps me to just have a normal, sustained level of time for work. So I have got a few clients who I'll take through a process. I'll do a strategy because I think that's important. You need to be able to start and understand what your why is when you're taking on social media marketing services. We'll go through 3 to 6 months of me helping to kind of facilitate the team or the individuals to then take it on and do it themselves, which has worked really well. So it's not me doing it all the time. I've also now helped to kind of give a surety to them that there is nothing in the world that's going to end if you don't post something that minute. People are not online all the time. So whether you're posting it first thing in the morning or late in the evening or the very next day, it's not going to have groundbreaking implications for you. Unless, of course, you're like, the president of the United States or something. It's very different. So I've helped to kind of manage clients' expectations in the way that I work. So I've got a combination of like standalone packages, which are fantastic. So I'll do strategy workshops or just give you the strategy and you could do it yourself. And then I've got clients who need a lot more hand holding. And like I said, they go through a process where I'll work with them to achieve it themselves. But yeah, I've had to come a bit stricter with my time and set boundaries, because it does become overwhelming if you're taking on too much.
And of course, one of the reasons you went freelance was that life's too short, that work-life balance, be there for my family. So beyond that you've just mentioned, how are you finding that balance these days?
Oh, it's a lot better. I have had to be very honest with myself, and also because I've got emerging teenagers now about social media use, and we've had lots of long and frank and open conversations about, how to manage your time and not being on your phone all the time. And so in a way, I think they've helped me as well to be very clear about what the boundaries are that I'm setting. So I've now got block periods. So I've got specific days where I'll do specific elements of my work. So it might be report writing on one day. It might be trend watching on another day. It might be creating, which is the part that I love, design work or captions, because I do enjoy writing. It might be going for walks, which is what I've started doing because that's where I do my best thinking. So I'll use that time to come up with ideas for different posts. And so I've blocked out time to do specific tasks. And that means that when they are home in the evenings after school, I've got 4 hours that are their bankable hours, and that's like non-negotiable. So I won't do too much during that time. I've also been a bit more consistent about the sort of events that I attend and not going to too many evening activities, for example, because even that in itself can become quite time consuming. So I'll have a balance throughout the month where I think about having activities that are outside of working hours and ones that are during working hours. And I've also reclaimed my Fridays. So as a remote worker, you're on your own most of the time. So Fridays are what I call my socializing Fridays. So I'll try and catch up with friends or peers that I haven't seen for ages that I know online or work locally. And we'll go for walks, or we'll go for coffee, or we'll just sit and hang out or something, go to an art gallery or whatever. So I've still got those moments where I'm actually interacting with other people and not trying to bank it all in on the weekends, which, can be quite difficult between kids' clubs and activities. So yeah, it's been good. It's been much, much better than those first 2 years where you're trying to cram in too much. I think I've got the balance right for now.
I like a reclaimed Friday.
Yeah.
That reminds me when there was one point where I was like, I'm going to go to the cinema on a Friday afternoon by myself. Yes. I did it one week. That was brilliant. And then the following week, we all went into lockdown and they closed all the cinemas.
Oh, no.
It was a great idea.
Yeah. Did you end up buying a massive TV at home?
Yeah, it's not quite the same.
No.
Okay, back with Yolanda in a moment. Just want to remind you that there is the Being Freelance community, which I would love you to come and hang out with us in, as well as a chat forum, which is a great place. It's like our own private place to ask questions, sense check, to celebrate things, to show people what you're up to. We also have online co-working, in real life meetups, as well as online socials to boot. We get to play Mario Kart, we do book club, we do live shows, plenty of stuff going on. Come find us, the Being Freelance community. Just click the link at beingfreelance.com. It's also a great place to build those relationships that ultimately lead to referrals. I'm always amazed, but also so chuffed for the people who find work via the community, either by being referred or by collaborating together on projects. It's a great place to be. Please come try it for yourself. Go to beingfreelance.com, click on community. As you heard with Yolanda, it's an important thing. Speaking of which, let's get back to her story. Have we covered all the ways that you put yourself out there, like market yourself? Because there was LinkedIn, networking.
Yeah, I'm part of a number of memberships. I have done a series of Instagram lives with some really interesting people. I'm in, I think I mentioned some directories where people are looking for particular marketers. And I've done some collaborations with businesses that also I've just find interesting. So we'll just do some sort of prize giveaway of some kind over the course of the years of a specific awareness days or charity drives or something. I've also, spent a bit of time doing some guest writing, like on blogs. Depending on the sector, I'd add my 2 cents about how social media marketing or ethical marketing might be good for that. Yeah, networking, being part of memberships, directories, all of those things. I think as far as you can spread yourself, that's intentional, of course, not erratic or without any thought, is a good way to at least get some visibility for what it is that you do. The challenge, of course, is, if you're in a field of millions of social media marketers like I am, how you end up sealing the deal on making sure that you attract the right people to work with.
How do you?
I think it's helping people to understand that not everyone can do your job. I think the challenge that you have as social media marketers that is like, oh, my cousin's nephew is really good at social media, so he can do it. And I'm like, can he though? So I think the challenge is being able to help people understand that there's just posting, and then there's what I do, which is being a bit more strategic about your content and your planning and your audience and offering some longevity to the work that is that you're doing. So when I think about when you're speaking to individuals, is something that I'm quite passionate about is storytelling. And I think that's probably from the work that I was doing as a journalist. So I'd ask them loads of questions, probably like what you do, Steve, when you're talking to people. And then I'm like, oh, so it sounds like you're saying this. And then they'll go, oh, yeah, I didn't think about it like that. And then we'll put together some sort of a creative spiel to go like, what if this was the big word that people remembered you for? Or what it is that, that people come back to you for, because it's quite important for them to be able to feel like they can be loyal to you as a brand. So that's helped. And I think when I get to the technical language, sometimes people are like, oh my gosh, I didn't realize that that's what it involves. I'm like, yeah, it's a lot of work.
And you do something, it's not quite a podcast, is it? But you do an audio thing with the Antisocial Socialites as well, right?
That's right, yeah. So every month we host an audio room on LinkedIn. So we'll choose a topic that comes up quite a lot in our community. So it might be, networking if you're neurodivergent, or if you're introverted, or you're not quite sure what to say when you're doing small talk. And so we'll do in half an hour's audio room. People can come up on stage and ask questions. We often have guests that come along and share their experiences as well. And for the most part, I think it's been fantastic, because we've had last year probably about 2,000 or so signups and really, really lovely packed rooms, which is always nice when you're trying to have these conversations. And it also meant that it encouraged us to look to do more in-person events, because people wanting to chat more than the half an hour time that was allotted every month. So that's how we started, and then moved on to the in-person events. So now I've got a combination of the two. And yeah, it's going really well. It's fantastic.
Have you noticed a difference that it's made for yourself in doing that? I know you're helping others, but either for yourself or for your business in doing those things.
Yeah. I think at the start of this conversation, I said I love talking, but not necessarily the small talk. So I think it's helped me certainly show up as an expert. I think that's difficult if you're online and trying to get that to come across in your social media posts that you might be sharing. There's something about people hearing your voice or seeing your face that I think translates much better often than, when you're reading messaging on social media. So for me, I think it's helped me personally in being able to kind of refine who I am, like what I do and how I work with people. because I have to say it every time, and that takes a lot of practice. It's also helped me network more widely with people who aren't in my original network, because audio rooms are open to absolutely everyone. So you could research events, and so I might come across people who aren't within my network coming along to those events, which have been fantastic. It's also been a great opportunity for, I think I mentioned, sometimes I'll go along to panelists, as a panelist to events that might be taking place, or host masterclasses. So from that perspective, it's been really good. And my co-founder, Liz, this year, we're really looking to kind of move towards public speaking opportunities, because the world is moving back into working in person, and people are being called back into the office, and not everybody has flexed their networking muscles in the same way. So I think there's space for those conversations to take place, where we kind of just help others to feel more confident in how they show up and what it is that they want to do, whether that's in an office environment, even talking to colleagues. We used to do that all the time. And now people, because they work from home, might not be able to stir up those conversations, which could lead to other opportunities. So from that perspective, it's been really, really helpful. And I think working alongside someone, so having a co-founder in a completely different sector, has helped to kind of put some eyes on gaps in my own business that I'm not focusing on, because this almost feels like a pet project. So I'm handling it like it would be a client, which feels very different to my own business, where, as you say, like a lot of time you spend in the doing and not necessarily in crafting what it is that you'd like to deliver. So I think it's helped kind of shape how I think about my own business and what it is that I'm delivering. And I love it. I love hearing people's stories. I love understanding what makes people tick. And, there's something fantastic about being part of community. You're so involved in working with loads of freelancers as well. That's less isolating, but also there's a camaraderie there that starts to grow, with people just being willing to kind of share and, just be helpful.
Oh, I'm glad I asked. There's obviously a lot of strategy involved in the work that you do for your clients. But it sounds like there's a lot of strategy perhaps to the way you think about your business and the intentions. Like, are you somebody who has goals and checks back in on them? And if so, how do you work that?
Yeah. So I'm going to do a quick little sizzle. I don't want to go. So that's my vision board there. Can you see that?
Ah, we're looking at so is that permanently on your wall?
It's permanently on my wall.
Describe a little bit of it for those who are listening.
I can. So every year I do a vision board, and I split it between things I want to leave behind, things I want to get better at in business, in relationships, in family life, and then just for me. So my words for 2025 are power and purpose. And last year it was gratitude. And that was because I was like, thank God I'm still here. Like, everything's really up in the air. I needed to figure out what the hell I'm doing. More for my personal life as opposed to like the business stuff. So that's worked. Thankfully, it's all fine. And so now I think I've gone through almost like the dormant period, if you think about nature. So that was like the winter, and now I'm stepping into spring. So I need to be able to start to blossom, bask in the sunlight as it happens. And so power and purpose is behind the vision board. So I thought about things like, how do I want to show up at networking events going forward? I've even thought about things like my wardrobe. So what are the colors that are standing out for me? So at the moment, it's pink and red. And then I've also spoken about sort of reclaiming my financial independence. So thinking about how do I make that a longer term objective? So the first few years, again, I was thankful I had a good steady income coming in, didn't really give much thought to it, to what I want to do into sort of 3 to 4 to 5 years. And then this year, I thought, no, I need to start planning beyond just this year. And I had a really good conversation with a coach. I don't know if you've heard of Laura Brunton. And she asked some really, really good thought-provoking questions. And it got me thinking, I was like, okay, right, I'm going to think beyond just the money, because there's something else behind the money. It's like, what is it actually that I'd like to achieve? And actually what I want to do is be able to spend more time, quality time with my kids, helping them to kind of realize the dreams that they have, which at the moment are minuscule things like, oh, I want to go to Disneyland. I want to, those sort of things. So that's sitting behind the money question. It was before I had like a specific number. I still have that number, but there's something else behind the number that's going to help sustain that goal going forward. I also have included things around fitness, obviously, and then I've put down specific clients that I want to work with, and I've got great ambitions around writing a book this year. It's not going to be a complicated book, but I think it'll be my passion project that will keep me going and make sure that I sit down and I continue writing. So it's a collection of recipes that my mom used to make, and I've just realized that I haven't cooked a single thing for my kids from South Africa for a very long time. So I need to be able to capture all of those items, and then there'll be an heirloom that we can start to carry on through the generations. So yeah, that's on the vision board. It's my dream big board, and then I whittle down from there and work out the specific goals that I'd like to achieve sort of every quarter, and I'll look back on them at least at every holiday and say, okay, where are we now with this? Did I do this? Did I not do that? I don't achieve all of them, but there's enough of them there to feel like I'm on the right path and things are working.
And it's literally in your vision every time you walk in that room.
Exactly. Exactly.
And what is that? Is this your office or is
this
this
is my office, yeah.
And is it at home?
It's at home, yes.
I love it. Now, Yolanda, I always do this thing where I ask for 3 facts about yourself to make 2 true, 1 a lie, and let me figure out the lie. What do you have for me?
Okay. The first time I went skydiving, I landed in a tree.
You landed in a tree?
In a tree.
Okay.
The second one is I've met Nelson Mandela. And the third one is I'm deeply afraid of butterflies.
Okay. What is it about butterflies?
You laugh, but it's a real thing. Yeah, they're sneaky. You don't see them coming. You don't see them coming, and then they just, they end up flying into you, and it's just all a bit complicated. Yeah, I took my children to a butterfly house when my daughter, who's 13 now, she was still a toddler. And I remember in my head, I had visualized that they'd all be behind sort of walled glass and it was fine. But they were flying absolutely everywhere. And I was like, what am I doing here? It's not enjoyable for me at all. And I just have not been able to go near a butterfly again since then. So, yeah.
Now you mention it, they are sneaky, flappy things, aren't they?
I'm fine if they're sitting on a flower. Great.
Sure, yeah.
But then they start flying and then my world turns upside down.
Okay. Next, you met Nelson Mandela.
Yes. So it was while I was working as a journalist in South Africa. He was still president at the time, and he had arranged a press conference, and we were all in the press office, and he did his inspirational big speech. And I thought, you know what, I know I'm not supposed to be fangirling because I'm going to be supposed to be super impartial and ask the hard questions. But I ran up to him afterwards and I said, "Oh, excuse me, Mr. President." And he reached out and shook my hand, and I did not wash my hands for days after that because I was so thrilled that I'd actually, touched a living legend. And he is exactly as he's described in newspapers. His aura when he walks into a room, you could just feel there was something different about him. He's funny, he's charismatic and extremely wise. So yeah, he's a great guy.
You did skydiving into a tree.
Yes.
Where was this?
Also in South Africa. The sad thing is we had about 2 weeks worth of training to be able to skydive independently. So it wasn't a tandem skydive.
Right.
And I was on the wing of the plane, and the trainer was like, "Right, you ready to go?" I said, yep, let's go. And I took so long to actually leave because I was so scared. He counted down and then just pushed me. And so I was coming down, flying, positioning myself. And I knew I had to land in the marked area in this open field, but it was surrounded by loads of trees. And I think there must have been a gust of wind or something because I couldn't position myself back. I just felt going all the way to the trees and then landed on a branch. Yeah, in the trees. And then had to get rescued.
So were you
I was
dangling?
just dangling, and my parachute was just over the branches, and I had to wait for somebody to come and collect me so I could get down. It was very embarrassing.
A gust of wind. Do you know what it was? It was probably a butterfly 1,000 miles away.
Exactly. Sneaky, I'm telling you.
All right, one of these is a lie. Are you old enough to have interviewed Nelson Mandela? But when was he president? I guess so. Early in your career, maybe. But I tell you what, you did seem genuinely quite traumatised by butterflies, which makes me think perhaps the lie is the sky. Maybe you also said that you were standing on the wing of the plane, and I don't think that's how skydiving works. I feel like you fall out a hole in the side of the plane. I don't think you clamber up on top of the plane and then jump. So I reckon on a technicality here, I think that story has plummeted to earth itself. So I think the skydiving is the lie.
Oh, you're so good at this. Well, it's a little lie in that I did go skydiving, and I was actually standing on the wing of the plane, but it wasn't me that landed in the trees. It was my friend who was doing the skydiving with me. So she ended up in a tree, and I was in the right location where I was supposed to be. So
hey. In the ring of smugness.
Exactly. Well done. Very good.
Yeah, but you were standing on the wing of a plane, which I didn't think is what would happen.
Yes, it was a small plane. So because it's not in tandem, so you get on the side and you hold onto the bar and they count you down and then you dive backwards and you go. I know. And I just stood there looking, what am I doing? I'm on the edge of a plane. Anything can happen. And this guy's like, Yolanda, you really need to go. So he counted me down about twice. And the third time down, he just pushed me. So I went flying.
No.
But it was the most amazing experience. I'm a bit of a thrill seeker. I can do those things, no problem. But don't get me near a butterfly. I can't do
it. Okay, now, Yolanda, if you could tell your younger self one thing about being freelance, what would that be?
So I was pondering this question for a long time, and I was listening to Mel Robbins' podcast yesterday, and she was talking about goal setting. And there's something that she said that just stuck me, and I thought, you know what, this is something that I probably would have told myself when I was younger. And she said, stop letting the fear of judgment hold you back. I think when I first started, and possibly I think, as you get older, this is something that happens quite a lot. I was reluctant to ask for help. I wanted to kind of go my own way, which is something that I've done all my life. But in doing so, I probably slowed down the success I could have been achieving because I was so stubborn. So what I would tell my younger self is to ask for help and advice, because there are lots of people out there who are willing to support you, and they're not your competitors. They're not out there to kind of rival your business, but rather to help and support what it is that you're doing. And I'd probably also say that it's important to take the leap when it feels right. So trust your judgment. What I tend to do is take a long time because I'm milling over things. I'll ask loads of questions, as I mentioned before. But if you're a freelancer, the pitfalls often come with loads of good benefits because you've decided to do something that nobody else is brave enough to do. So, yeah, I think that's the advice that I'll tell myself.
Yolanda, it's been so good to talk to you. Go to beingfreelance.com and set up for all of our guests. I'll put links through so that you can find Yolanda online. Go say hi. Find her on LinkedIn, for example. If you're an antisocial socialite, you know where to join. And of course, speaking of community, if you fancy coming and joining us, go to beingfreelance.com, click on community, and I'll see you in there as well. But for now, Yolanda, thank you so much.
Thank you.
And all the best being freelance.
Thank you so much, Steve.
How good is Yolanda? Go to beingfreelance.com. I'm actually going to be taking part in one of the Antisocialites LinkedIn lives at the end of this year, at the end of 2025. I know, that's how well organised they are. They were like, what are you doing in December? I was like, I don't know. I don't know what I'm doing at Easter. Go to beingfreelance.com, as there are for all of our guests. There are links through so you can find Yolanda online and start enjoying and being part of those LinkedIn lives as well. Speaking of live stuff, plenty happening in the Being Freelance community, so do come find us. I'll see you in there, of course. That's where I like to hang out, as well as on LinkedIn and Instagram. And I'll see you for another one of these very soon indeed, just a couple of weeks from now. You have a good week. Being Freelance.